Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. All Declan Jacobs wanted was silence, 12 acres of forest, a private road, and no neighbors in sight. But when a power-hungry HOA tries to steal his land with threats, lies, and sabotage, they ignite a war they never saw coming. And Declan, he fights dirty and legal. When I first bought the land, all I wanted was silence. The kind you could feel pressing against your ribs when the wind dies down and the only thing left is your heartbeat and maybe a distant hawk. 12 acres of forested peace, just north of Asheville, carved out from an old hunting camp that hadn't seen a soul since the 70s. There was no traffic, no HOA newsletters, no bored retirees walking their bichons and judging the height of my grass. Just me, my tools, and a hell of a lot of potential. The road was the first thing I fixed. Not the house, not the septic. The road. Built back in the disco era by hunters with more grit than permits, it had been half swallowed by mud, pine needles, and disuse. But I saw the bones underneath. I brought in crushed stone, graded it by hand, even built a proper drainage shoulder. By the end of that first summer, it was damn near pristine. And more importantly, mine, surveyed, registered, recorded with the county as a private ingress easement with no shared ownership. I put up a sturdy gate with a code lock and bolted on a bright red sign, "Private Road. No trespassing, no turnarounds, no excuses." The house took me a year. It was half collapsed and fully haunted in that Appalachian way old things tend to be. But with every nail I drove the ghosts a little further out. I wasn't building it for anyone but myself. No HOA board to tell me cedar shingles didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. No Karen with a clipboard counting how many days my truck stayed parked in the same spot. It was the kind of life you built from the ground up, with calluses and legal filings. For a while, it was good. Damn good. Business at my small construction company was steady. I took the road into town maybe twice a week. Tops. No one bothered me. Then they started building on the ridge. At first, it was just survey flags fluttering like confused butterflies in the underbrush. Then came the trucks. By the end of spring, bulldozers were crawling across the hillside like termites. I didn't think much of it. Subdivisions bloom around Asheville like fungus. People like to live close to the trees, so long as there's Wi-Fi and a Trader Joe's nearby. Eventually, a sign went up near the new entrance road. Elk Pine Vista, a gated HOA community of elevated living. I laughed the first time I saw it. Elevated living. My ass. They'd paved over salamander dens and stuck up vinyl palaces with fake dormers and names like the Spruce and the Bluebird. I didn't have beef with anyone. If they wanted to pay $750,000 for a garage-forward beige box with a panoramic view of my backlot, that was their problem. My road didn't connect to their new development. Not officially. They had their own freshly poured asphalt curling up the south face of the ridge. My road ran along the north, completely separate, until one evening I caught a drone hovering above my driveway. At first I thought it was a kid's toy, so I walked out waving my arms, but the damn thing held position, perfectly still, like it was recording. I picked up a rock. The drone zipped upward like a startled fly and disappeared over the trees toward Elk Pine. I chalked it up to nosy neighbors. Then, 2 days later, a guy in a high-vis vest walked up my road and started taking photos of the culvert. I stepped out onto the porch. "You lost?" He blinked up at me. Are you Mr. Jacobs?" I crossed my arms. "Depends on who's asking." He straightened up like a teenager trying to act like a man. "I'm from the HOA Development Oversight Committee for Elk Pine Vista. We're conducting infrastructure assessments for future integration, just some basic easement alignment." "There's no integration," I said flatly. "This is private property." "So, is this road?" He gave a practiced corporate smile. "Well, that's what we're here to determine. You may have overlapping access with community members and our legal team." I stepped off the porch and started walking toward him. He didn't finish his sentence, just muttered something about a miscommunication and retreated back toward the ridge. The next day, I pulled my deed, printed the official parcel map, circled the easement language in red Sharpie, and pinned it on the inside of the gate for anyone who wanted to get cute. A week later, the mail brought something different. Not a flyer, not an Amazon box. It was a glossy, cream-colored envelope embossed with green foil. Inside, a folded tri-panel brochure with stock photos of smiling white families and hiking trails. At the top, A welcoming proposal for integration, Elk Pine Vista HOA. The language was optimistic. We are pleased to extend a preliminary invitation to integrate your property into the Elk Pine Vista community, as your lot represents a geographically strategic access point to Phase 3 properties. We believe collaboration benefits all parties. Then came the offer. If you agree to place road management under HOA oversight, we will waive all dues for 2 years, provide basic maintenance support, and include you in future property value adjustments. And then the threat, written in polite italicized legalese. Pending formal integration, access to communal ingress points may be evaluated for conflict mitigation. HOA reserves the right to petition for jurisdictional inclusion via municipal zoning pathways if consensus is not reached. I read it 3 times. Translation: give us your road, or we'll make your life hell. The next morning, I replaced the old sign with a bigger one. Bold, reflective letters. Private road, owned and maintained by D. Jacobs. Trespassers will be recorded. Then I called the sheriff's office and asked to file a formal notice of trespass. When the deputy asked me who it was against, I said, all of them. Every damn person in Elk Pine who thinks their shortcut matters more than my deed. I woke to the sound of metal being murdered. There's a very distinct noise that a steel gate makes when someone takes a battery-powered angle grinder to it. A high, angry shriek that doesn't belong in a quiet mountain morning. I rolled out of bed, grabbed jeans, boots, and my pistol, just in case, and headed outside. The smell of hot metal hit me before I reached the bottom of the drive. My gate, the same one I installed with my own hands, heavy steel, welded hinges, was sliced clean through. The lock hung uselessly, still smoking. The gravel on my private road was gouged with deep, muddy tire tracks like someone had driven through in a hurry. But the worst part wasn't the sawed-off gate. It was the brand new aluminum sign bolted on a post where mine used to be. Community Access Road, Elk Pine Vista HOA. All members permitted. I blinked once, then twice, then said out loud, oh, hell no. Someone had cut through my gate, stole my sign, and put up theirs, on my property. I pulled out my phone and started recording everything. Measurements, angles, the damn bolt heads they used, evidence. Because while I'm not the yelling type, I am the document everything and let a lawyer chew them to bones type. I called the sheriff's office. When Deputy Morales arrived, a 40-something woman with the patience of a saint and the exhaustion of someone who's dealt with far too many HOA disputes, she stared at the severed gate and said, let me guess, Elk Pine Vista. Do I look psychic? She shook her head. No, you look pissed. She took photos, asked questions, and filled out an official trespass and destruction of property report. Then she whistled low. They came out here early. Grinder marks are fresh. They also left a gift, I said, pointing to the mailbox. Inside was an envelope. Heavy paper, fake embossed seal, like they were trying to cosplay the United Nations or something. The letter was printed on thick cardstock. Mr. Jacobs, effective immediately until jurisdictional clarification is complete. Your right to use the road has been temporarily suspended to avoid community conflict. Access will be restored when integration is finalized. Then, bullet points. You will be exempt from annual dues for 2 years if you voluntarily transfer road jurisdiction to HOA management. Refusal to cooperate may require us to initiate municipal proceedings for forced easement reassignment. They even underlined forced at the bottom in cheerful curly font. We look forward to your partnership in community progress. Deputy Morales read it, then let out a laugh that was 50% disbelief. 50% I will be talking about this at the station for weeks. They're trying to annex your land like a mini Soviet Union. I folded the letter. They cut my gate to deliver a bribe. She corrected me. Bribe plus extortion. We walked back to her cruiser so she could finish the report when something else caught my eye. A stack of permits showing through the envelope window. Most of it was HOA nonsense about integration pathways, but one line made me stop. Contractor request. Blue Ridge Asphalt LLC projected budget allocation $180,000. Project resurfacing and ongoing management of access road, once integrated Blue Ridge Asphalt. I knew that name. A paving contractor with county connections and the same last name as Karen's husband, the guy who worked in land use administration. The deputy whistled again. Smells like kickbacks. I don't believe in coincidences, I muttered. She snapped photos for evidence. You want my advice, she said. Get a lawyer fast. HOA people like this don't stop. They escalate. I thanked her and called the county registrar myself. I wanted it on record, officially, that the road belongs to me and only me. The clerk on the other end typed for a while, then read it out loud. Recorded easement, private ingress, sole owner, Declan Michael Jacobs, no shared rights, no public right-of-way, no liens, no community access. Can I get that emailed? Already sent. I hung up, printed the documents, laminated copies, and bolted one directly onto the new temporary barrier I set up. Big red letters, private road, legally recorded, not part of HOA. Trespass will be prosecuted. By afternoon, I'd edited together a short video showing the cut gate, the fake sign, the extortion letter, the proof of ownership. I posted it in a regional landowner forum and in a Facebook group for Western North Carolina homesteaders. Within an hour, comments flooded in. HOA tried that with me, lawyered up and crushed them. They literally cut your gate. That's felony level stupid. Name them. Shame them. Somebody else commented, Elk Pine Vista is notorious. They bullied an elderly couple into selling their land. Great. Just great. I hadn't even had time to finish my coffee, and I'd already stepped into a suburban Game of Thrones minus the dragons and plus 1,000 Karens. As the sun dropped behind the ridge, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on the tailgate of my truck, looking at my broken gate. They wanted my road. They'd vandalized my property to get their foot in the door. They genuinely thought a letter printed on fancy cardstock would intimidate me. And worst of all, they weren't finished. I could feel it in my bones. I wasn't expecting a knock on my door at 7:30 in the morning, but there it was. Firm, rhythmic, official, the kind of knock that says we brought paperwork. I opened the door still in flannel and work boots, mug of black coffee in hand, expecting maybe the sheriff's office with an update. Instead, it was a guy in a HOA branded vest. Yes, they apparently have those, holding a clipboard and wearing that passive-aggressive smile practiced by every parking enforcement officer in history. Mr. Jacobs, he said, we're pleased to inform you that your property has been formally nominated for annexation into the Elk Pine Vista Homeowners Association. I just stared at him. He continued like he was reading from a menu. Last night, the board held an emergency vote to initiate boundary expansion. Your parcel has been deemed geospatially consistent with Phase 3 integration parameters, and the motion passed with majority support. You're saying you voted to take my land into your HOA? He gave a slight shrug, like this was all perfectly normal. Well, not your land, just your participation. As a courtesy, you'll have 90 days to come into compliance with HOA guidelines. There's a welcome packet. I slammed the door in his face, not dramatically, just enough to end the stupidity. By the time I finished my coffee, he was gone, but not before zip-tying a laminated notice to my gatepost. Proposed HOA expansion area, subject to governance pending review. It was signed by Karen Gates, president. Of course. I took the notice down, threw it on the fire pit, and watched it curl into ash. 10 minutes later, I was on the phone with my lawyer, Angela Cho, razor-sharp ex-real estate litigator from Charlotte who left the big firm life to represent landowners in rural disputes. Her voice was calm and surgical. They're trying to do a hostile HOA annexation. Technically possible, but only under specific conditions, and your case doesn't meet any of them. I exhaled. They don't seem to care. They will when I'm done with them. Start collecting everything. I'll file an injunction if they submit anything formal to the county. But they already had. That afternoon, a friend of mine who worked as a clerk in the municipal zoning office forwarded me an internal draft. It was a proposal submitted by the Elk Pine Vista HOA for jurisdictional boundary expansion, citing community need for unified access management. They included a map, and my entire property was shaded in pastel green like I was already part of the damn neighborhood. Buried in the supporting documents was the smoking gun, a justification memo claiming that the road in question is already in use by 3 or more Elk Pine residents and therefore qualifies as a shared asset under community access law. That was a lie. I had surveillance footage to prove no one from Elk Pine was using my road. I had installed plate recognition cameras 6 months ago after a string of local thefts. Every vehicle entering or exiting was recorded. Also in the packet, a bullet point claiming Mr. Jacobs has not objected to informal use of the road. That was true, Only if we defined not objected as replaced a gate, filed a police report, and posted laminated warnings with legal citations. My favorite part? A handwritten note in the margin of one document. Phase 3 homeowners threatened to sue over lack of northern access. Fix ASAP. Oh, they were desperate. And desperate people make sloppy moves. The next day, I drove into town and stood in front of the public zoning office with a folder an inch thick, full of survey maps, time-stamped video stills, police reports, and my original deed. I asked to speak with the Municipal Planning Committee chair directly. Turns out, he was not pleased. They filed this without any adjacent property owner consultation, he muttered, flipping through their application. That's going to bite them. It's going to do more than bite, I said. It's going to cost them. But HOA wasn't done yet. That weekend, flyers appeared on mailboxes up and down the new development. My friend from Lot 22, the only sane one among them, sent me a photo of the flyer. Protect our community access. Support the expansion vote. Declan Jacobs' refusal to cooperate threatens safety and cohesion for Elk Pine Vista families. Don't let one landowner block our future. Block their future? My land had been here since Carter was president. They'd been here 5 minutes and wanted to draw property lines with a highlighter and a delusion. The flyer included a QR code that led to an e-signature petition, full of names from Phase 3 residents who hadn't even moved in yet. Some signatures were duplicate. One was a dead guy. I checked. They were manufacturing consensus. I went full war mode. I posted side-by-side images of their claims and my video footage, created a page documenting the manipulation, exposed the lies, tagged local reporters, pinned everything to the top of my business site, which had a few thousand monthly hits thanks to my construction work. Angela filed a cease and desist letter. The HOA's lawyer responded with boilerplate nonsense, community benefit, cohesive planning, voluntary alignment. But behind the corporate speak, they were rattled. They'd tried to sneak my land into their paper kingdom. Now the spotlight was on them, and I wasn't going anywhere. I started noticing the glitch on a Thursday, tried to order pressure-treated lumber from my usual supplier, a small yard out in Hendersonville that's never failed me. The website wouldn't accept my delivery address. Invalid location, it said. Tried again. Same thing. Then I tried FedEx. Same error. I thought maybe it was a server issue, so I called the yard directly. The guy on the line was friendly but hesitant. Yeah. Declan, your address is showing up as restricted zone. We got a notice from our insurance partner. Apparently there's a zoning review going on. Something about conditional access. Until that's sorted, we can't deliver out there. Liability reasons. That's when the temperature in my skull started to rise. I checked Google Maps. My property pin was gone. Not misnamed, not moved. Gone. Apple Maps. Same. My road was marked as under review. There was a small gray icon where the name should be. A little triangle with an exclamation point. I didn't even know that could happen. Within the hour, I was on the phone with Angela again, pacing around my kitchen like a bull in a cage. They're trying to erase you, she said bluntly. Digitally. So they can frame you as the anomaly. But how? I asked. Who has the power to screw with Google Maps? There was a pause on the other end. Then she said it. Karen's husband works for the Buncombe County Land Use Department, doesn't he? I didn't answer right away, because I already knew she was right. John Gates, smug, mild, deeply bureaucratic. I'd met him once at a county info session about septic runoff. He struck me as the kind of guy who could weaponize a building code. Angela said, if he submitted a provisional road status change, even temporarily, it would cascade. GIS systems pull from county databases. That would trip flags across platforms. You're saying this is deliberate? I'm saying it's malicious compliance with a smirk. It didn't stop there. That afternoon, 2 of my subcontractors called and backed out of next week's foundation job. They were getting notices from their insurance providers that the road to my site was listed as pending legal dispute. One of them told me, point blank, if something happens out there and the road's in dispute, I'm not covered. I like you, Declan, but I've got a business to protect. I couldn't even argue with him. I'd do the same in his shoes. Then came the complaints. I got a letter from the county safety office, anonymous submissions reporting dangerous road conditions on my private drive, claims that the grade was too steep, that it lacked guardrails, that it posed a risk to community foot traffic. I've seen goat trails in Nicaragua with less drama, but the county had to respond. The letter stated they'd be sending a site evaluator within 10 business days, and that if the claims were substantiated, access could be restricted for public safety. That same day, I got a voicemail from my commercial insurance agent. "Declan, we've had several concerns raised about vehicle access to your property. Until we can verify the road's status, we have to temporarily pause coverage for incoming deliveries. We're sorry, but this comes from legal, not us." My business was being strangled, not with a rope, with red tape, but I wasn't just going to sit there and take it. I filed a formal Freedom of Information Act request to the Land Use Department, asking for every document, memo, and internal email that mentioned my name or parcel number over the past 90 days. Angela contacted a GIS specialist who confirmed that the review status on my road was entered manually from the county end. No automation. Someone pushed a button, and I updated my camera system. Every vehicle, every face, every attempt to touch what was mine. That evening, I walked the road, still damp from a late mountain rain. The gravel crunched beneath my boots. Pine needles swirled in the drainage ditches I dug myself. I looked around at the trees, the quiet, the land that had never belonged to anyone but me, and then I saw the sign. A small laminated rectangle stapled to a wooden stake just a few feet off my property line, facing the road. "Dangerous path. Use at your own risk. Elk Pine Vista HOA is not liable for injury beyond this point." Beyond this point. They were claiming my road now came with their liability waiver. I pulled the sign out of the ground and broke the stake over my knee. Enough was enough. I didn't think they'd go as far as they did. I mean, I knew they were desperate, vindictive, and dumb in the dangerous way that comes from too many HOA meetings and not enough real life. But what they did next, that was a whole new level. It started with the sound of shouting. I was in the garage working on a tool cabinet when I heard it. A woman screaming something about a child and danger. At first, I thought maybe someone's kid had wandered too far up the ridge. We get deer, coyotes, the occasional black bear. Accidents happen. Then I heard the sirens. Ambulance. Not fast, though, like someone had called it in, but with no actual emergency. I stepped out onto the gravel just in time to see the HOA's favorite pet, Mrs. Lawson from Lot 15, wailing dramatically next to the drainage ditch near the edge of my property. Lying awkwardly next to her was a young boy, maybe 10, tops, no blood, no twisted limbs, just lying there. He looked up at her once, and she shushed him. My stomach dropped. 2 more HOA board members came running down the path with their phones out filming. One of them, Brent, a guy built like a melted popsicle with a Bluetooth earpiece permanently lodged in his skull, shouted toward me. This is what happens when someone refuses to maintain shared access. Another one, "You've created a hazard. Jacobs." A child could have died, except the kid was sitting up now, brushing leaves off his jeans, completely unbothered. The paramedics looked annoyed. One knelt down to check the kid, who promptly announced, "I tripped," in the most bored voice imaginable. That didn't stop Karen. She appeared from the tree line like she'd been waiting for her cue. Full blazer, HOA badge on a lanyard, clipboard in hand. She marched straight toward me. "This is your doing," she snapped. "Your refusal to cooperate has created an unsafe environment for children in this community. You'll be hearing from our attorney. This changes everything." I was too stunned to reply at first. It was so obviously fake, so staged. I looked past her to the kid, who was now getting a juice box from one of the board members like he'd just completed a commercial shoot. I looked at Karen. "You're trying to frame me for hurting a child," I said quietly. She blinked, just once. We're documenting a public safety incident." "You staged a public safety incident." She turned on her heel before I could say more, but I'd already grabbed my phone. I pulled up the live feed from the cameras near the gate, rewound 20 minutes. There it was, clear as day. The mother checking her watch. The boy glancing nervously down the hill. Karen whispering something just out of frame. The kid slowly sitting down in the ditch without even falling. The rescuers waiting off the road until their moment. A goddamn play. I uploaded the footage online with the caption, "HOA stages fake injury to steal private road. Watch them get caught in 4K. By morning, it had over 60,000 views. People love a good HOA villain. And this was gold. The crocodile tears, the bored kid, the obvious staging. Local influencers picked it up. I even got a message from someone who runs a YouTube channel called Suburban Tyrants Unmasked, asking if they could do a breakdown. But it wasn't just public opinion turning. Angela took the footage straight to the county prosecutor. Staging an accident to influence a zoning dispute, she said. That's attempted fraud. And if a public official was involved in the planning, she didn't have to finish the sentence. That afternoon, I drove into town and stopped at my favorite diner. Half the people inside had seen the video. A contractor at the counter raised his coffee cup and said, "If you ever run for HOA president, I'll build your podium." I laughed, then remembered I wasn't even in their HOA. That night, I came home to find the road blocked again. Not with orange cones this time, concrete barricades set deep into the gravel like they'd been poured in place. A spray-painted message across the top in huge block letters, HOA property, do not remove. They'd put it on my side of the line, on my land, and they'd done it in the middle of the night. I didn't call the sheriff. I didn't call Angela. I called a guy named Mac. Mac owns a small excavation company. He's old school, cash preferred, and believes that most problems in life can be solved with either diesel fuel or a good lawyer, sometimes both. Next morning, at 8:01 sharp, Mac pulled up with a flatbed hauling a tracked excavator. It took exactly 7 minutes to yank out the barricades and dump them in a pile on HOA's side of the line. I stuck a laminated copy of my deed to the top block, added a note in Sharpie, trespass again, and I start billing. Then I called a local news crew and told them they might want to come take a look at what passes for negotiation in Elk Pine Vista. They showed up just in time to film Karen standing in the mud with her arms crossed, watching her precious barricades get dismantled in front of 3 cameras and half the damn neighborhood. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes said it all. This wasn't over. There's a certain look people get when they know the storm is coming and there's no umbrella big enough to stop it. I saw that look on Karen's face as I stood outside the county courthouse on the day of the hearing, holding a leather folder full of documents sharp enough to cut steel. It had been 2 weeks since the staged accident and the concrete barricades. 2 weeks of media pressure, community backlash, and a sudden interest from local officials who wanted nothing to do with HOA drama until they realized the HOA in question had been caught staging child endangerment like it was a middle school play. Angela had worked overtime. She filed an injunction stopping all actions related to HOA integration until further notice. She subpoenaed records. She dug into public archives like a mole with a law degree and a grudge. And oh boy, did she find gold. The hearing was held in a medium-sized courtroom with beige walls, flickering fluorescents, and a judge who looked like he was 10 minutes away from retirement or homicide, depending on whether lunch arrived on time. On one side, me, Angela, and a few folks from the Landowners Association who'd come to support me. On the other, Karen, 2 HOA board members, and her husband John Gates, who'd finally shown his face in public after weeks of ducking every question sent to his office. He wore a beige suit that tried to say, respectable civil servant, but mostly said, I Googled courtroom fashion at 3 a.m. The judge began by reviewing the evidence, video footage, property deeds, GIS data, legal filings. The concrete barricades alone raised his eyebrows. The staged accident made him reach for his glasses. But then Angela dropped the hammer. She introduced a surprise witness, a woman named Cynthia, who used to be the assistant accountant for Blue Ridge Asphalt LLC, the same contractor listed in the HOA's road resurfacing proposal. Cynthia took the stand with the confidence of someone who'd had enough of being told to just delete that file. Under oath, she testified that Karen and John had met multiple times with Blue Ridge management and discussed how, once the road was declared shared access, federal infrastructure grants could be funneled to the HOA, with Blue Ridge as the designated contractor. Did you find any written documentation of these meetings? Angela asked. Cynthia nodded. Yes, emails, calendar invites, even a budget draft showing an estimated grant request of $180,000 tied directly to Mr. Jacobs' property. Angela submitted them as Exhibits G through L. The judge leaned forward now, fully awake. Mr. Gates, he said, addressing Karen's husband, is it true you were involved in discussions regarding a grant application for a property not legally part of the HOA? John stammered. Well, the community was anticipating expansion, and that's a yes or no question. Silence. Yes, he muttered. Were you also responsible for filing the temporary review status that caused the mapping platforms to restrict Mr. Jacobs' address? John looked at Karen, who gave him nothing but cold eyes. I was instructed to assist in clarifying jurisdictional access, he said weakly. In other words, you used your position in the Land Use Department to intentionally alter public records to benefit your wife's HOA. Angela stood up. Your Honor, we also have emails where Mr. Gates tells a GIS technician to flag the property while we settle the paperwork. Make it look messy enough to slow down deliveries. That's verbatim. At this point, the judge looked like he was considering jail time just to clear his calendar. He dismissed the courtroom for 10 minutes to review the scope of misconduct. During the break, Karen tried to corner her husband near the water cooler, whispering furiously. He didn't even look at her. When we reconvened, the judge's tone had shifted from annoyed civil servant to wrathful deity. This court finds credible evidence of collusion, document falsification, abuse of public office, and intentional obstruction of private commerce. Mr. Gates, you are hereby referred to the State Ethics Board and the District Attorney for further investigation. He paused. As for the HOA, Karen shifted uncomfortably. The court finds that Elk Pine Vista HOA acted in bad faith, submitted fraudulent petitions, and engaged in dangerous misconduct. Their attempt to annex Mr. Jacobs' property is denied in full. Their signages and barricades are to be removed within 72 hours. All legal expenses incurred by Mr. Jacobs will be paid by the HOA. Angela leaned toward me and whispered, "But wait, there's more." She stood again. Your Honor, based on the evidence of malicious manipulation, sabotage of business operations, and public defamation, we are submitting a civil suit seeking damages in the amount of $290,000. Karen stood now, hands trembling. That road should belong to everyone. He's blocking progress. The judge banged his gavel. You're done, Ms. Gates. Then he turned to security. I suggest you escort Mr. and Mrs. Gates out before they say something else that gets them indicted. As the courtroom cleared, I sat back in my chair. I didn't smile. I didn't pump my fist. But I felt something shift. For the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest got lighter. The next 72 hours felt like a hangover in reverse. Clarity, energy, and the kind of righteous satisfaction that settles deep in your bones when justice actually works. I didn't gloat. Not publicly anyway. But I did stand at the end of my freshly cleared driveway, coffee in hand, watching as a pair of sweaty contractors hired by the HOA slowly unbolted their precious community road signs and loaded them into the back of a rental van. One of them, a skinny kid who looked like he'd been guilt-tripped into this gig by a Craigslist ad, muttered, "I don't even know what HOA stands for, man." "Hell on asphalt," I replied without smiling. They didn't laugh, probably didn't get it. Probably didn't care. Didn't matter. The barricades were gone. The signs were gone. And, best of all, the smug little glint in Karen Gates' eyes, gone. But she didn't slink off into obscurity. No. Karen had one more desperate card to play. She filed an emergency appeal, claimed the judge had a conflict of interest because he once owned land near this region and might therefore have a bias toward rural landowners. I'm not making that up. That was the actual argument. It was denied so fast, it didn't even hit the docket before getting stamped, rejected in all caps. Meanwhile, John Gates wasn't just under ethics review. He'd been suspended from the county land use office pending a criminal investigation. I heard through a friend that he tried to spin the whole thing as doing his civic duty, but when confronted with the emails, including one where he literally wrote, "Let's mess with the GPS so deliveries can't get through," he lawyered up. I never saw Karen at the courthouse again, but her legacy, that stuck around a little longer. Turns out, her maneuver with Blue Ridge Asphalt triggered a separate inquiry. The county began auditing their past contracts, and wouldn't you know it, overbilling, nepotism, missing invoices. The whole pit of snakes came tumbling out. At the next HOA board meeting, which they were legally required to live stream, Karen tried to retake control of the narrative. She wore a bright red blazer and opened with, "I know many of you are confused." She didn't finish that sentence. One of the other board members, an older guy named Mark who had stayed quiet through most of this mess, stood up, raised a manila envelope and said, "I'm submitting a motion for your removal, Karen, not just as president." But as a member, she looked like he'd slapped her with a trout. "You can't do that," she snapped. "Actually," he replied calmly, We can. It's in the bylaws. Section 4.7, misconduct, fraud, or bringing disrepute to the association. He'd highlighted it in pink. The vote was unanimous. They gave her 72 hours to vacate her position, but she didn't wait that long. She left her house, the big gray one with the solar panels she never connected to anything, the next morning. For sale sign popped up within a day. She didn't even list it herself. Went through a third-party agent. I found out later that she'd mortgaged the place to help cover their legal fees. And it still wasn't enough. The civil suit we filed stuck. The judge upheld the damages. $290,000 for lost business, defamation, property damage, and legal costs. Karen was personally liable for a portion of it, especially since much of the fraud was done with her name at the top of every document. Angela said she'll either declare bankruptcy or have to sell fast. She sold, quietly. No farewell party. No goodbye cupcakes from the HOA. Just gone. And that left a void. Not just in the neighborhood, but in the culture of Elk Pine Vista. Turns out, when you remove a tyrant, people start acting like people again. 2 weeks after the court's final decision, I was invited, formally, believe it or not, to attend an open community forum. The same HOA that had tried to annex me now wanted to establish a respectful dialogue. I showed up with copies of the land deed in my back pocket, just in case anyone forgot how this all started. But I didn't need them. Mark, the new acting president, opened the meeting with a statement. We acknowledge past actions taken by this HOA were illegal, unethical, and deeply damaging. We apologize to Mr. Jacobs and all other residents impacted by those decisions. He looked straight at me. No sarcasm, no deflection, just an apology. And to his credit, when I stood up to speak, nobody interrupted me. I told them the truth, that I wasn't anti-community, that I had no interest in fighting unless I had to, that I believed in property rights and consequences. A few people clapped, most just nodded, and that was enough. Later that night, I stood at the edge of my road, watching the stars come out over the tree line. No sirens, no contractors, no concrete, just me, my land, and a silence I'd earned. Winter came early that year. Frost hit the ridgeline in late October, and by November, the gravel on my road sparkled under the headlights like someone had dusted it with ground-up diamonds. The trees shed their leaves like they were finally letting go. I knew the feeling. I'd spent the last few weeks doing things I'd put off during the war. Repairing the side shed, fixing the motion sensor over the east gate, replacing some of the older wiring in the workshop. For the first time in months, there were no letters taped to my mailbox, no fake citations, no clipboard warriors. Just peace. But peace doesn't mean stillness. It's not the absence of noise. It's the presence of clarity. The civil judgment money came through in stages. After the asset seizure, court-ordered lien enforcement, and a short forced sale of Karen's property, I was made whole. My lawyer took her cut, worth every damn penny, and the rest went straight into security upgrades. I didn't build a wall. That's not how you protect land. I built certainty. A new automated gate with two-factor authentication, pole-mounted license plate readers that uploaded to cloud storage in real time, motion-activated lights with backup solar power just in case someone tried to cut the lines again, and cameras. So many cameras, not just facing out, facing in. Because sometimes the threat isn't from outside. A new steel sign now stood beside the gate, polished and simple. Private road. Declan M. Jacobs, sole owner. Trespassers will be recorded, reported, and removed property rights aren't negotiations. Below that, a smaller plaque. Brass, discreet, but intentional. HOAs are temporary. Property is forever. It got a few chuckles online when I posted a picture. One guy said it should be on a t-shirt. Another offered to stencil it on a mug. I didn't care about merch. I cared about the message. I wasn't trying to start a movement. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't get emails. Dozens of them, homeowners, landowners, people dealing with HOAs who'd crossed the line, people who'd had their fences challenged, their businesses sabotaged, their peace shattered. And now they had a blueprint. One guy from Georgia wrote, "Your story gave me the fire to push back." I thought I was the crazy one. Another from Arizona sent a photo of his own private road sign with a note that said, "Inspired by Asheville's finest." Asheville's finest. That made me laugh. I still kept to myself. Mostly. But there were new faces now, elk pine had changed. Less whispering, more neighborly nods. One of the newer residents stopped by one day with a basket of apples and a genuine apology. He hadn't voted in the expansion push, he said. Didn't know what was going on until it was too late. I thanked him and offered him a seat on the porch. We talked for an hour about nothing in particular. Sometimes that's enough. The county completed their investigation into John Gates. He was charged with abuse of public office, falsifying official records, and conspiracy to defraud a private landowner. Pled down to avoid prison time, but he lost his job, his pension, and his professional license. Last I heard, he was living in a condo 3 towns over, trying to get into consulting. Good luck with that. Karen, she vanished from real estate groups. Her license was suspended for misrepresentation and ethical violations. Rumor had it she moved out of state. Some say Florida, some say Utah. I didn't care. She took her nameplate with her. The HOA elected a new board. This one focused on drainage repairs, shared trash collection, and keeping the trails clean. Imagine that, an HOA doing actual homeowner things. No more crusades, no more land grabs. One of the board members stopped by a few weeks back and asked if I'd be open to serving as a community advisor. I smiled and said, "You've got to be out of your damn mind." He laughed. Figured I'd ask. I told him if they wanted to discuss shared snowplow access in the winter, I'd listen. But annexation, governance, that ship had burned to the waterline. Now and then, I still get the itch to check my cameras at night. Just to be sure, just to confirm the silence isn't a trick. But more and more, I let it be. Because some things are settled, not just with a court ruling, but with consequences. And if someone ever tries this again, if they come for my land, my rights, my road, they'll learn the same lesson Karen did. I don't share what I built, and I don't negotiate with trespassers.